NTE does not feel like a normal new gacha game. A lot of upcoming games get attention because people are curious for a few days. Then the conversation fades, the hype cools off, and everybody moves on. But NTE somehow feels different. It feels like a game that keeps pulling attention towards itself, even before people fully know what to make out of it. That is why I think NTE feels more dangerous than most new gacha games. Not because it's bad, not because it is overhyped, but because it has something a lot of new gacha games do not have. It is very hard to ignore. Now, most new gacha games run into the same problem. They look interesting at first. People talk about them for a little while, and then the internet moves on. That happens because most games are easy to understand quickly. You see trailers, you see the characters, you get the basic vibe, and then your brain files it away as just another gacha. That is deadly in a very crowded genre, because at that point, the game is no longer competing on hype, it is competing on memory. And if people do not remember you, they do not care when the launch day comes. And I'm not just talking about NTE at this point. And that is why so many games fail before they even really begin. They do not become a problem, they become background noise. But NTE does not feel like background noise at this point. The first reason is that it feels different enough to make people stop and look. Even if someone does not immediately understand everything about it, they still feel like they need to figure it out. That matters more than people think. And in gacha, attention is everything. If a game is too familiar, it will get ignored. That's a promise. If it's too confusing, it will get dismissed. But if it is unusual in a way that feels intriguing, it creates a stronger connection. And that is where NTE started to become dangerous. Because it's not just trying to be another polished gacha release. It feels like it's trying to create a reaction. And in today's gacha market, creating a reaction is often the first step to winning. Now, why weird can be powerful? A weird system or unusual design choice is not automatically a good thing, but it's very memorable. And memory matters. If people can describe your game in one sentence, that will be useful. But if they need to think for a second because your game feels unlike the others, that can be even more powerful. It creates conversation, it creates clip, posts, and even debates, which all of those will be free marketing. Now, NTE feel like one of those games. The type of game that make people want to explain to each other. They want to say, oh no, wait, look at this. You have to see how this works. Or even, this is actually very different. That kind of curiosity spreads faster than normal praise, because praise is very easy to scroll past. Curiosity is very hard to ignore. And that matters because the gacha space is very crowded. We got games like Wuwa, Genshin, the kings of the gacha genre right now. And those games look very expensive, very polished. But polish alone is no longer enough. Players have seen way too many launches, too many trailers, and too many promises. So at this point, the real battle is not just quality. It would be attention. And NTE feels dangerous because it seems to win attention in a way that most gacha games cannot. It doesn't just rely on, oh, this looks nice. It makes people ask, what the f is this? And that's where they get hooked. Because once people ask those questions, they would be more engaged than with a generic reveal. Someone in the comment may ask, well, how did NTE compete any different from the other gacha games? Well, most gacha games enter the market with a clear expectation problem. People know roughly what they're looking at. They know the type of content, they know the structure, they know the usual systems. So the game has to work very hard to justify itself, either with the story or with the combat mechanics. NTE feels like it's approaching the problem from a different angle. Instead of just blending in, it seems to create a little uncertainty. That uncertainty is powerful because it forces people to pay attention longer. It gives the game room to stay in the conversation. And let me tell you, NTE has been in a lot of conversations. Well, not conversations per se, controversies. I'm not going to cover them in this video, maybe in an upcoming video. But anyway, in a genre where people move on fast, being in the conversation is a very huge advantage, especially after a certain game failure. That's why I call it dangerous. Not because it already won, but because it has potential to keep its name in people's head long enough to matter. Maybe Ananta will change that conversation in the future, but at this point, it cannot. Now there is a downside. The more attention a game gets, the more people expect from it. That means NTE is not just fighting for attention, it is also fighting against inflated expectations. And that matters. Because if people get too excited too early, then the actual game has to live up to a version of itself that exists in people's minds only, not in reality. And this is where dangerous hype can turn into a dangerous pressure. If NTE delivers, the weirdness and attention become strength. If it misses though, all that attention can turn into disappointment very quickly, making a new game have an early end of service. That is why this kind of game that Hata Studio is playing is very risky. Meanwhile, the same thing that can help it fall can make it very, very strong in the genre. And to be honest, a lot of upcoming gachas feel very safe. They look good, they look fine, they have familiar systems, and they hope that having good visuals alone will carry them. NTE does not do that. I mean, the visuals are great, but it feels like the game is trying to dominate curiosity itself. Because if a game becomes the one people keep talking about, either good or bad, then other games have to work harder to get noticed. NTE does not need to beat every other game in every category. It just needs to become the one that people remember first. That's what they're trying to do. And this is exactly what makes them so dangerous. But what could stop it? Of course, games with very strong hype for the upcoming future like Ananta would really destroy NTE. If at some point NTE had very frustrating systems, if the gameplay does not feel good, or even if the novelty fades too quickly, then that curiosity that made it very strong will fade away. People will move on, the attention will dry up, and that same thing that made it stand out will stop working. So in my opinion, NTE needs to turn its weirdness into a long-term identity, not just short-term noise. The Porsche collab was awesome. Having the 1000-1 nights event and storyline, at the beginning it was very weird, but through it I really enjoyed it. So the short term will be very bad for the game. It needs to make the people feel like the game is very interesting even after their first reaction fades, or as we call it, the honeymoon phase. And that is the real test. To end it all, NTE feels more dangerous than most new gacha games because it does not just want to be noticed. It wants to stay in your head. And in a genre where most games disappear in a crowd, that is very powerful. So the real question is not whether NTE can attract attention. It already did. The question is whether it can turn that attention into something long-lasting. Because if it does, it will not be just another new gacha game. It will be one of the games that other gacha games have to deal with.